I knew my sister hated me, but I didn't realize how far she'd go until she slid a birthday gift across the table and laughed. A DNA test. Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake, Naomi said, loud enough for every fork to freeze midair. I swallowed my shame, mailed the kit and waited. Months later, our family's estate lawyer called for an urgent meeting about Grace Ellington. My mother went pale. Naomi's smile vanished. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. They already knew what I was about to discover. Most people think of family as a soft place to land. Mine always felt like a house with cold floors, beautiful from the outside, freezing the second you stepped in. Growing up in the Ellington home in Denver, I learned early how to make myself small. I was the quiet child, the one who did her homework without being asked, the one who melted into corners so my mother wouldn't sigh and my sister wouldn't sneer. Even then, Naomi's world seemed to orbit at the center of everything. She commanded attention effortlessly. Loud laughter, dramatic stories, a knack for turning every room into her stage. And my mother, Evelyn, applauded every move. When Naomi brought home a B, Mom called her well-rounded. When I brought home straight A's, Mom blinked as if she'd forgotten I existed for a moment before saying, "That's nice, Grace. Can you help set the table?" By the time I was 35, I had built a life far from that house. Austin suited me. Quiet mornings, simple routines, stability I had never known as a child. I worked as a financial analyst, dressed in soft, neutral tones, and tried not to think about the constant ache of being the forgotten daughter. But when my father, James Ellington, passed away, the gravity of that family pulled me back. He had been the only steady presence in that house, a man of few words but unexpectedly warm. A hand on my shoulder, a proud nod at my college graduation. I didn't know then that he carried a secret darker than anything I could imagine. 3 months after the funeral, Mom insisted on a small birthday dinner at the old house. Her voice on the phone was too bright, too rehearsed, like she was reading lines someone else had written for her. When I stepped through the front door, I smelled the familiar mix of lemon polish and old books. The chandelier glowed, but the house felt emptier without Dad's quiet presence. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, flipping through resort brochures, tanned from some recent trip, barely glancing at me. Mom poured herself more wine than usual, her hands trembling slightly. Something unspoken hung in the air, like a storm waiting to break. I tried asking about the will, gently, respectfully. Mom froze, her smile stiff. "We're just not ready yet," she said, eyes flicking to Naomi. Naomi smirked, as if she already knew a secret I didn't. Looking back, that dinner was never about celebrating my birthday. It was about setting the stage for my humiliation. The tension didn't arrive all at once. It crept in like a draft under a closed door. Every detail felt rehearsed. Naomi kept glancing at me with that expectant look, waiting for a cue only she and Mom understood. Mom's wine glass was never empty, though she barely drank, her fingers circling the stem like she needed something to anchor herself. Dinner itself was a performance. Naomi talked non-stop, her job, her husband, her plans to redo her kitchen in a French farmhouse aesthetic, while I sat, carefully measuring every word, every glance, wondering how I'd become the invisible audience in my own family's theater of cruelty. Mom laughed at every comment Naomi made, even the ones that weren't funny. When I spoke, it was as if the room dimmed. Someone had turned down the volume on my existence. Halfway through the meal, Naomi leaned back in her chair, eyes glinting. "So, Grace," she said sweetly, still lording her Austin job over me. Before I could answer, she launched into another story about herself. It wasn't a question, I realized, just a reminder that I'm background noise. Beneath her smug expression, something else simmered. Anticipation, calculation, the quiet thrill of control. When Mom stood to bring out dessert, a small store-bought cake she hadn't even bothered to plate, Naomi pushed back her chair dramatically. "Actually," she said, reaching for a glossy box wrapped in silver paper, "I brought a birthday gift. Something I think you'll find enlightening." Mom's face went pale. "Naomi." Naomi ignored her, sliding the box across the table like it contained evidence, not a present. "Go on," she said, her smile razor-thin. "Open it." I peeled back the paper, a strange stillness settling over me. Inside was a DNA testing kit. The room went silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Naomi leaned in, laughing under her breath. "Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake in this family." The words were deliberate, cutting. Mom flinched. I saw it, the fear, not the anger, in her eyes. Naomi hadn't just insulted me. She'd spoken a truth that wasn't supposed to leave anyone's mouth. Later that night, in my old bedroom, the soft blue walls I'd chosen at 15 still intact, I rifled through boxes like someone searching for proof of their own existence. At the back of the closet, I found an envelope that didn't belong. The dust around it was disturbed. Inside was a photograph. A younger Evelyn holding me as a baby, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, "Forgive me." My hands shook as I photographed everything. Then I turned to the DNA kit Naomi had delivered like a weapon. She had wanted me to take it. She had wanted chaos. Fine. I mailed it the next morning. Not for Naomi, but because I needed to know the truth she was so eager to weaponize. 5 weeks later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the results arrived. I was at my desk in Austin, half listening to the hum of the office vents, when the notification pinged on my phone. I expected dread. What I didn't expect was clarity. Sharp, cold, undeniable. No biological relationship detected with the Ellington family. My breath hitched. I kept reading. A suggested match to the Hartman lineage appeared. A name I had never spoken, never heard, suddenly tethered to me by blood. It didn't hurt the way I imagined. It felt like confirmation of something I had always known. I had been a guest in my own childhood, never a daughter. What shook me even more came next. I sent the results to our family group chat. Nothing dramatic, just a screenshot and one question. Does anyone want to explain this? My phone buzzed almost immediately. Mom called, sobbing, not from remorse but from fear. "Grace, sweetheart, please delete that. You don't understand. This is complicated. Things happened a long time ago. We moved past them." She never apologized. She never acknowledged the decades I'd spent feeling like a burden in her home. Instead, she begged me to bury the truth again. But Naomi didn't call. He texted. Just 4 words. "Well, now you know." Told. Satisfied. As if she'd been waiting half her life for the moment I realized I didn't belong. That night, I called her, hands trembling, questions tumbling out before I even knew how to ask them. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice dripping with irritation. "Why, Grace? Why now? Why push this? Why humiliate me?" I demanded. She laughed softly, a sound sharp as ice. "Because I've kept this family secret for 20 years. Because Mom owed me. Because you've played the victim long enough. And now the right people will finally get what they deserve." She hung up. Those words clung to me like smoke. The next morning, I began quietly investigating. I spoke to relatives, neighbors, old family friends, anyone who had known my parents before Naomi and I were born. What I discovered chilled me. Naomi had been working for months, meeting estate lawyers, hinting about upcoming changes, acting as if Dad's estate already belonged to her. I needed help. Real help, the kind Dad would have insisted I seek. I hired Sarah Ong, a well-known attorney specializing in complex inheritance disputes. I handed her everything. The DNA results, screenshots of Naomi's messages, odd conversations, the fear in Mom's voice. Sarah listened, her expression calm, methodical, taking notes as if assembling a puzzle. "Your instincts are right," she said finally. "This isn't just resentment. Someone is building a case to erase you." 3 days later, I got the call that would change everything. Mr. Dalton, our longtime estate lawyer, sounded unusually formal. "Grace," he said, "your father left instructions for a will reading under very specific circumstances. Those circumstances have now been met. I think you should be prepared for what you are about to hear." Prepared? No one could have been. The morning of the reading, Denver felt colder than I remembered. Not a seasonal chill but a bone-deep warning. Sarah and I arrived early at the downtown building where Mr. Dalton's office occupied the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood, the kind of place where truths didn't hide, they echoed. We chose seats near the windows, out of the direct line of fire. Sarah whispered, "Observe everything. Speak only when necessary." Her calm steadied me. Mom arrived next, looking exhausted, hair hastily pinned back, clutching her purse as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. She didn't greet me, didn't meet my eyes, and sank into a chair at the far end of the table, staring at the polished surface as if it might swallow her whole. Then Naomi entered. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble. each step carrying the smug confidence of someone already certain of victory. She wore a cream-colored, perfectly tailored suit, heavy makeup that made her look sharp, unyielding, and of course, brought her own attorney, a man whose aggressive estate litigation was practically advertised on billboards. Naomi gave me a slow, triumphant smile. "Grace," she said as if greeting someone irrelevant. Her eyes gleamed with expectation. She believed she had already won. Mr. Dalton entered last, carrying a thick folder. He moved with the deliberate calm of someone who understood the weight of what he was about to reveal. At the head of the table, he rested a hand on the folder and looked at each of us. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to note that James Ellington left explicit instructions for how this reading should proceed. He anticipated complications. Everything I am about to share was prepared with full knowledge of circumstances that some of you may find surprising." Naomi's smirk faltered. Dalton opened the folder and began reading. "I, James Robert Ellington, declare this my final will and testament. I leave 70% of my estate, including the family home, investment accounts, and all assets, to my daughter, Grace Ellington." Silence snapped across the room like a whip. Naomi shot to her feet. "She is not his daughter," she shouted. "We have DNA proof. She has no legal." Dalton raised a hand. "Please sit. There is more." Reluctantly she did, jaw clenched tight. Dalton continued. "I have known since Grace was 2 years old that she is not my biological child. I chose to raise her anyway. I leave her my legacy because she alone has proven worthy of it. This decision requires no further validation." Naomi's face drained of color. Mom closed her eyes, pain tightening her features. But Dalton wasn't finished. 8 months before his death, Mr. Ellington hired a private investigator to document any attempts to manipulate or interfere with his estate. The investigator collected substantial evidence, including payments, withdrawals, bills, and meeting logs demonstrating Naomi Ellington's efforts to pressure her father into altering his will, including unauthorized withdrawals totaling $50,000 during his illness. Naomi's attorney stiffened. "We weren't informed." Dalton cut him off. "You were not required to be." He continued, his voice steady. "The investigation also documented consultations with 3 estate lawyers, conversations about upcoming changes to the family inheritance, and the purchase of a DNA test, mailed to Naomi's home and gift-wrapped." Naomi's eyes widened. "That's ridiculous," she said, voice shaking. "It was a joke." Dalton set down the final document, a handwritten note in my father's unmistakable script. "Mr. Ellington requested that I read this aloud," Dalton said. He unfolded the page. "Naomi, I know what you've been planning. I watched you try to manipulate your mother. I hoped you would choose differently. These consequences are your own doing." A sound escaped Naomi's throat, part gasp, part growl. Her attorney leaned toward her. "Do not contest this," he hissed. "There's a no contest clause. You will lose everything." But Naomi was spiraling. "This is fraud," she spat. "Grace manipulated him. She tricked a dying man." Sarah stood calm but commanding. "The will explicitly acknowledges Grace's parentage and documents Mr. Ellington's reasoning. Any contest would be frivolous and trigger the no contest clause, including repayment of outstanding loans, approximately $200,000. Naomi's face twisted. "That's not a loan. He gave me that money." "Not according to the estate records," Dalton replied evenly. Mom finally spoke, her voice a fragile whisper. "Naomi, stop." But Naomi couldn't. Years of entitlement, bitterness, and fear collided at once. "This should be mine," she hissed. "All of it. I'm the real daughter. I'm the one who stayed." I rose slowly, voice steady. "You didn't stay, Naomi. You controlled. You threatened. You built your life on secrets you never earned." She turned toward me, eyes wild. "You don't deserve." "Grace," Dalton interrupted gently, "there is something else your father left." He opened a smaller envelope addressed to me. Inside was a short letter, every word carrying the weight of my father's love. "Grace, you spent your life believing you were invisible. You were not. I saw your strength, your kindness, your integrity. You were my daughter, not by blood but by choice. I leave you my legacy with absolute certainty that you will honor it." My vision blurred. When I looked up, Naomi finally understood. This wasn't my victory. It was her defeat, crafted by the man she had underestimated most. The legal fallout came swiftly. Naomi's attorney withdrew the next morning, leaving her scrambling for anyone willing to take a case collapsing under its own weight. When she attempted to contest the will anyway, the judge dismissed it within minutes. The no contest clause held. Evidence was overwhelming. Her inheritance vanished. The $200,000 loan from Dad became personal debt owed back to the estate, and the $50,000 in unauthorized withdrawals had to be repaid within a year or face further legal action. For the first time in my life, Naomi looked small, not humbled, just cornered by consequences she'd always outrun. A week later, Mom came to my Austin apartment. She sat on my couch, hands folded, eyes red-rimmed. She told me everything. The truth about my biological father, the decades-old agreement, the guilt she'd carried but never confronted. I listened, but I didn't reach for her. Some wounds require distance, not closeness. I want to make things right, she whispered. I believe you, I said. But making things right starts with letting me live without carrying your secrets. In the months that followed, I stepped back from Denver entirely. I managed the estate with Sarah's help, settled accounts, and quietly, deliberately chose the life I wanted next. For the first time, I made a choice without asking who it might disappoint. I left Denver behind and built a quieter life in Oregon, where the lies couldn't reach me anymore. Some endings aren't loud. They're choosing peace over pain. And if you've ever been the overlooked one, know this. You deserve better than the people who failed to see you.